Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's webinar. My name is Patrick, and I'm presenting on Forms dashboards today. That's this week's topic. We try to pick a topic every week that is something we're currently working on with customers, consulting topics to help you stay, I guess, abreast of the latest developments here at Qdabra. Before we get started, I have a quick announcement to make, and that is we have seen the first of the Office 365 breaking news here. We knew that Microsoft might stop the sandbox in 365. It's only 365. If you don't have Office 365 and you don't have the sandbox forms, you don't care. But for those of you with 365, we did see a customer just yesterday that could no longer publish their sandbox form. Now, the forms that were working already, they're still working. But it does look like August 28th is the date that they're going to perhaps pull the sandbox support. We had a customer, though, that tried to publish a form, basically just update it with the sandbox, has some code in it, and their form broke. So we quickly got them hooked up with our FormsViewer app. We talked about FormsViewer last week. I'm going to talk about it again this week, but that was our quick way to convert them over so they could continue working and not be blocked. So if you have an Office 365 form and you're seeing a sandbox issue, don't hesitate to give us a shout, support@qdabra.com, where you can go up to our qdabra.com page, take a look at the underneath products. There's a tools section for for what we call FormsViewer, which is our free tool that allows you to convert your InfoPath forms from SharePoint to FormsViewer app. They continue to work. There's a very minimal conversion expense, in many cases zero, and you'll be future-proofing your forms. Okay, today we're going to talk about dashboards. We're going to do a demo, quick demo, and I'm going to show you how we built it. And for today's demo, I want to show you this is kind of an interesting end-to-end scenario. So we have a lot of customers that they exceed a certain number of data rows, for example. Like you have a SharePoint site, if you go beyond 5,000, 50,000, whatever it is, there's some limit and your views become slow. So we have customers that need to pull large sets of data, and they're using Azure, which makes sense because they're using 365. 365 and Azure work really well together. So we're going to show you how to pull that data from Azure, from a database, into a dashboard form that you use to edit tasks, and we're going to show how you can submit them back to a SharePoint library. Now, why would you want to do that? Notifications, right? You want to be able to create your own simple workflows to notify your customers, notify your people inside, your internal folks, that something is happening. And then it turns around and synchronizes it back to Azure. So this is kind of an interesting, I've got a diagram here I'll show in a second, but this is kind of an interesting scenario. And well, first of all, let's ask folks if they have large data sets. I have a simple poll here. I'm going to quickly shoot off this one question poll, and we'll see what you say. Get a quick take on how many rows of data you're submitting per month with your largest process. So think about the largest form you have and how many submits are you getting a month? Is it 100, 1,000, 10K, 100K, a million? And we'll get a quick show and tell here of your data. So one example of a form could be a timesheet, could be a leave request form, whatever. Generally, it's going to probably map to the size of your organization. Okay, it looks like we've got about 3/4 of you have voted. 22% are in the 10 to 100 range. About half of you are in the next range, and then we've got about 11% on the next two levels. Nobody is at the top level. Okay, great. Well, thanks for letting me know how your data is, how large your data is. So we're going to show some benefits here, and the benefits of the dashboard, and especially the FormsViewer dashboard, is inline editing. In other words, you can actually edit stuff inline. It's very hard to do this with a list form, and almost impossible to do it with a regular form because you want to map it to two different lists or two different data sets. So you have a parent, you have a child. You want to be able to relate them together and edit the children and group them underneath the parent. We've done a lot of webinars talking about this parent-child editing in the past. You can go to our webinar channel on YouTube and you can search parent-child list, and you'll see 3 or 4. One of them Hillary did. I've done one. So one of the benefits of inline editing, I'm just going to quickly show the demo now because I'm going to switch back and forth, but I want to show you the demo. I've got it both Chrome and IE. I'm just going to launch this dashboard. Now this is a link, so you'd have a link to this dashboard on your site. And here we're actually using a form that we developed in InfoPath. We're displaying it in FormsViewer just to show you that Forms with Code continue to work with FormsViewer on 365. It's our ad for the day here. So this is a dashboard form, and I'm really happy to give a shout out to one of our customers today for allowing us to use his form that we developed for him. Mark McLean has basically a company in Virginia, and they do they help customers basically fix problems with their house. It's called modern remodeling, and they actually help customers who suffer damage from hailstorms and whatnot repair their roofs, repair their siding. They've been around for quite a long time, and they've got a need here to manage their production schedule. So you can see here that underneath this dashboard, let's just take a look at this for a second. So we've got the filters on top. He can filter it by his trades, he can filter it by the dates, and it's pretty easy to do this. Let me just take a look at what we have down below here. So underneath, I'm going to use the test form here. So he's got a couple concrete trades here. So if I go in and filter this by concrete, we should see that only those items get filtered down. So it's relatively quick. You saw how fast it was. They had to actually query the database and get that information. And then he can drill down. He can say, well, I want to update this item, right? So he can edit this inline. By just clicking this button, he can edit it and change the status, for example, to completed. And so we're going to take a look at this. This is going to be AGR heating. So we're going to change this to completed. And now, when it's submitting it, when you hit that checkbox, it's submitting it to the library. So we can kick off a workflow there. And then that is going to turn around and synchronize with the database. So let's take a look at the database. Actually, before we do that, let's take a look at the diagram to show you what's actually happening. So what we're doing is we're taking the data from SQL Azure, and we're pulling it into this dashboard that we've got. And this dashboard is hosted in FormsViewer, but it's just an InfoPath form, easy to develop, right? And we'll give you this as part of the webinar today. And then what we're doing is we're editing the data and we're submitting it back to a SharePoint library. And this library, for example, we can open the forms from this library. In fact, if we go to the library, you'll see that I've got here, there it is. There's the form I just submitted. If I click on the form, it's going to open it up in the form services. And so this is a child form, right? And you can see here that the status is now completed, and the date completed was today. So I just changed it. It's very simple information for the actual task. I can also add notes to those tasks. So if I wanted to go back, for example, let me just close this and go back to the dashboard. I could go in here and add a note. And let's see if this works here. So we've got, we shouldn't have any notes for this item. So it's querying the notes for it. And we're going to have to add one. So we'll add one that is red. Here is a red note. Of course, FormsViewer supports rich text and people pickers nowadays too, so no worries there. And then we'll change the job type to, let's say, simple, and we're going to try to change the job type to simple again, and then we're going to submit it. So when we're submitting it, what's happening is it's actually just submitting it back to this library. So if I click on this, we should see that data come in here. There it is. Here's the red note. You can see simple. Now, then the library is turning around and it's synchronizing it with the database. And the way we do that is we've got another app here that we've installed that synchronizes the 365 site with Azure. And this synchronizes it, and we've got some settings here the synchronization process, it can specify some different configurations, but there's where it's synchronizing. It's synchronizing to our web service running on his Azure account. So let's take a look at that web service. I think I have an IE. Let's see here. I'll take that back. Maybe it is. Oh, let's just go there. Oh yeah, I knew they would say that. Let's try that from IE. I think I have just logged in from IE, so I'm going to try it again from IE. Well, I knew that would happen. So let me just get the password here. Trying to log into, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you, we have our web service accelerator for InfoPath and XML data and SQL connectivity. So it maps the XML data to SQL. So this web service is called dbExcel. Many of you may be familiar with it already. Many of you are probably using it. And here we see the latest version of dbExcel, which is the 3.1 version running on Azure. And you can see here that we've got 18 of these product schedule items here. So let's drill down into this document type. And in this document type, you can see that in the database tab, we have a mapping from there's a JavaScript bug on that page, from the form to the database. So what you see on the right here is you see the field data in the form, and there's actually a child field data for the tasks. And then on the left you see the actual SQL table. So let's take a look at the SQL. So I've got here, I'm going to refresh this. This is, let's just take a look at, see if we can find the one that changed before we refresh it. So I believe it's number 12 here. So if we actually click refresh, we should see that item, where is it here, got updated. And if we scroll over here, you'll see that the completed date is now set. And did we get the type? Yeah, simple. So the job type is simple. So that data was changed. And what we're seeing here is the database actually change it. Let's go back to the form and let's change it again. So let's see, I'm going to go back to the form and where is the form? I'll open up again. We'll open up the dashboard again. I need to get out of my, this is the problem. I'm in the wrong RDP here. So I'm going to go back to the form. And I'm going to, actually I'm just going to refresh, just to reload it. So the nice thing about this is that it submits to the library and it doesn't need to refresh the form because the data is all stored in the form as well. So that submit to the library is actually an asynchronous process. If we go back to our presentation, you can see that what's happening is it's turning around and synchronizing it with the database. But this process, this step number 3 down below, this is async. Even though it happens fairly quickly, it's not synchronous. So it shouldn't say, it says synchronize, but it really is an asynchronous sync. And then what happens is the database accelerator, which I just showed you, is mapping it to SQL based on that mapping definition. Okay, so let's make another change here, and we'll see the table get updated. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually unrestrict my filter. I'm going to get another value here. Now one of the nice things about FormsViewer with this is you don't see any postbacks to the server for the in-form hide show stuff or any of that other stuff. So I'm going to go in here and it looks like it looks like it didn't actually reset the filter correctly. So let me reopen it. You know, we just deployed this. There's a few kinks still left in the form, but in general it's working pretty well. So we'll go back into that sample where we had these 6 rows, and we're going to take a look at one of these other ones here. We're going to edit this one here that says SQL, and I'll just change this job type to warranty, and I'm going to just make that one change, and then I'm going to submit it. Now, if I go to the production schedule here, if I go to the library, I'm just going to go back to the database. I'm just going to see if we can refresh the database here with the that value. And database in the background. So the one we want to look at is SQL. So it's the vendor's SQL. So it's right here. So the bottom one, the second one from the bottom, 15. And we're going to hit refresh. And what we want to see is we want to see that type on the right here go from job type go from null to warranty. And sometimes this process will take a minute or two because of that asynchronous nature, but you can see how fast it is. It's already updated it. Okay, so that's pretty much the quick demo. Let me go back to my slide and show you kind of where we're at. And I'll explain how we did this again. So what we did today was I showed you a demo where I opened a dashboard using FormsViewer. And this dashboard is querying an Azure database, pulling data in to show you a parent-child view with groupings and ability to filter and edit data. When you edit the data, it submits it to SharePoint library, which allows you to connect to workflow. It also synchronizes that data to the database so that it round trips it so the database is updated with the latest data. And once again, the benefits of doing this, why use a FormsViewer dashboard? Well, for the FormsViewer piece, it's really the last bullet here is the performance. But in general, dashboards are great because you want to see all of your data at once. You want to be able to do inline editing. You might have a large data set, so you need to filter it. You want to do something that looks good, that's beyond the functionality of the stock SharePoint view. Add coloring, you saw that with the notes I added, and so on. So for the demo, this is what I did. I'll send the PowerPoint deck out so you can kind of refresh yourself if you're interested in reading up again on how we did it and what we did. How did we do it? Well, this is kind of a general guideline of what it takes to do that demo. You can install Azure, Windows Azure. I recommend A3 or above, SQL Express. That's going to cost you around $200 a month for the Windows Azure service. You can go with A1 or A2, which is a smaller virtual machine, and it's going to cost less. I think A2 is about $100. A1 is even cheaper than that. It's about $50, $60. You're going to install this accelerator that maps the data from the XML into SQL, and it takes us between 1 and 2 hours to do that with you. We've got documentation. You can try yourself, but we're here to help. In addition, you're going to take that sample template I give you as part of the webinar today, and you can make changes to it for your process. So you basically make changes based on your what you want to show. Maybe it's not tasks and trades for your dashboard. You want to show something else. And so that would take 2 to 4 hours of time to make changes to the form, maybe perhaps more, depending on what you want to do. And then what you'll do is you'll install our FormsViewer app to allow you to view and edit that data in 365 without having to worry about Microsoft's change to the sandbox coming up at the end of August. And that gives you the extra functionality to be able to transform the data, to be able to do complex edits on it. And you'll see some of those commands. Let's take a look at the form, actually. I haven't even showed you that. Here's the form in the InfoPath Designer. And if we take a quick look at the commands that we're using here, let me just show you. It's a pretty simple form. If we click on the button, you'll see that we've got rules on this button. And the rules are to copy the data. So we're using a main data source for all of the children data, but when we want to submit it to the library, we have to copy it to a secondary data source. That's what the 2DS stands for. And the reason for that is we want to submit an individual row. We don't want to submit the entire table to the form library. And then it submits that piece, the snippet, using these commands. So we've got a few QRules commands built in here. This one actually is not important, clear errors for FormsViewer, but if you're doing validation, it is. We have to insert processing instruction into the XML to let SharePoint know that it is an InfoPath form that can be opened. The child form doesn't require FormsViewer. As you saw, we can just open it with the regular InfoPath. And then we insert another processing instruction, and these are just stock XML processing instructions, and then we actually submit it to SharePoint. So pretty simple. Let's see. I wanted to do a quick shout out to Mark, who is here, our customer. Thank you, Mark, for joining. I'm going to make Mark an organizer. And Mark, if you've got a few words, you can tell everyone here, you know, I guess your experience with this tool that we developed, and maybe how it's helped you. And Mark, do you have audio? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Thanks for joining. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for joining.
My pleasure. Well, I think, when did we meet? A few months ago, Patrick?
Yeah, it must have been like May, maybe April, I don't know.
And we were going down that SharePoint path where we were trying to tie list with parent and children, and found out fairly quickly that it just was a slow process. And then we decided to move forward with the info path and the new FormsViewer app, and it's been a good process. We've got a pretty custom, complex CRM. We could have bought one out of the box, but we decided to build one for our specific business processes. And these guys have done a great job, great team that I've been working with. And I'm not an IT pro or a developer, but I fully understand, you know, what we need to get done in this new environment. Unfortunately, our friends at Microsoft just seem to make changes sometimes without telling us. You know, the professionals may find out, but unfortunately, the end users don't find out until it's too late.
Well,
thank you. What else I can add?
Oh, yeah, I guess one quick question is, you know, one of the issues that we had was performance, and I think we did two things specifically to try to address that. One was we moved the data to Azure for the quicker querying, and the other one was then using the FormsViewer app, which doesn't do the postbacks. How do you feel? I mean, obviously the load time is still a little bit slow today, but how do you feel about the once the dashboard is loaded? How do you feel about the performance?
Well, once the form is loaded, the performance is 2, 3, 4, 5-fold, and we're not getting our friendly correlation error when we're in the 365 environment either. That was more frustrating than you know, developing the system. But at the end of the day, the actual response time, and we're going to hit this table pretty heavily this afternoon and tomorrow with every job that we have open now, and I'm very confident that the speed will be very welcomed by our staff, because they've been, you know, we developed a task and a project manager within the out-of-the-box SharePoint task app, and unfortunately, as you build jobs and add notes and so forth, it sort of slows down to a screeching halt. But this form so far has met our needs very well.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the vote of confidence there. Of course, we're here to help fix any issues that come up during the test phase as well. And thank you so much for being here. I want to turn around the, this is a quick webinar we're doing, and I want to make sure that people get a chance to ask a question here at the end. And then we will post the video on YouTube like we always do, and send you out the package today. Any questions for me? It looks like we have one comment here from Stacy. Thank you, Stacy, for being here. So to do this, you need both your product, Steve Excel, and Form Tools. Yeah, so we actually, we're a consulting company. Our main focus in life is helping you to automate your business processes. We're not here to sell you a product. We tend to be very technology agnostic. But in using these cloud tools, we find out that, you know, there are some gaps. There's some things that don't work out quite the way they're sold. And so we've developed these, what we call gap fillers, these accelerators. The accelerators basically, we charge you to install them, the time it takes us to install them, and the time it takes you for us to support them. In general, we recommend 4 hours a quarter, but we're not selling a license or anything like that to you. We're basically providing the tool. We ask you to pay us for the time it takes us to install it for you. If you want us to do that, we've got documentation, like I said. So it's not about trying to sell you a product here. It's about trying to give you a path forward in 365 for dealing with large data sets and helping you to build a codeless, and this is a code-free form. The accelerators give you the ability to create a no-code solution. So just keep that in mind, that we're here to help you and we're not trying to charge you a large fee for a product. That's not our business. Our business is consulting, and it always will be. Thank you for that question, though. Any other questions for us today? And I want to thank everyone for being here. I see a lot of friendly faces. We had a pretty small turnout today, just about 15 people here. But we'll get up on YouTube, and we look forward to having you here again next week. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to send email to us at support@qdabra.com. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Misty.